The following is a production of Sharkflight Media. Sharkflight Media. Sharkflight Media.
From mechs to mages or agents to argonauts, this is the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing. This is the CKP Future Books Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the June edition of the Future Books Podcast. We have our wonderful publisher and editor and general jack of all trades, Chris Kennedy, with us again this month.
General Ne'er-do-well.
General Ne'er-do-well. Man, we've got a great month this month. We've got 5 science fiction and 1 fantasy book coming from New Mythology Press this month, and we're going to go over and talk about those for just a few minutes. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you today? I'm
doing really well, thank you. We're starting to see spring here, and things are greening up here, and it's getting warm. I assume the same thing's happening in Queen Jock, North Carolina.
Absolutely. I don't know if you read the newsletter here this past week, but it was the return of summer to the Outer Banks. We got passed by a car that had a license plate that said Turon. And I said, just like the robin is the herald of spring, the arrival of the Turons heralds summer. So we must be getting close to summer.
Well, we certainly have some great beach reads and some great books coming out this month for people who are getting out of school and now have spare time. We start the month off with 2 of the hottest authors with CKP and their second book in the Salvage Title spinoff series, the sequel to Hunter and Hijinks. We got Pirates and Payback by Nic Plume and Melissa Olthoff.
Absolutely. And this, if you like the first one, you're going to love this one because it just takes it to another level. It is, the second book in the trilogy, so it's the same characters doing more and better. And as a brief aside, I was speaking to Daniel Wisniewski, who is the person putting together the audiobooks for this series. And he got started on Hunters and Hijinks here this week. And he said it's taking him longer than normal to do it because he has to keep himself from laughing as he's going along.
Yeah, when people when people ask me about Hunters and Hijinks, I tell them that it is a comedy tour de force. If you liked Robert Asprin, you're going to really love these books. They are funny and they are adventure filled.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you get with the second one, Pirates and Payback. Like I said, if you like the first one, you're going to love the second one because I thought it was, I liked it a lot more than I did the first one, and I liked the first one. So I can't wait to get to the third one, which will be out next month. So looking forward to that.
This is a perfect example of what happens when CKP takes 2 authors that are great on their own and put them together. The books are more than the sum of their parts, and
absolutely.
I can't recommend this book enough to people. I think you make sure that you buy the first one and read it first. This is a series that you want to read from beginning to end.
Absolutely. The synergy between the 2 authors is great. And, it's fun to listen to them talk about the books as they're writing and going back and forth at each other because you can almost see these 2 as brother and sister, just the way they bang on each other, and it's a lot of fun and you can tell they're just having a ball writing together and it really comes out in the words.
I can't agree with you more. And I haven't heard the audiobooks, but I can't even imagine how funny it would be to listen to these as you're driving down the road.
Yeah, the first one is should be finished by this Friday. So I get it turned into ACX and it ought to be out on Audible about 2 weeks later. So let's see, it should be available probably no later than middle of June. So people can look for that as well.
So if you don't have time to read and you're going to be spending a lot of time on the road, this would be a great book to pick up. And you'd be supporting two fabulous authors that deserve every penny they get.
Absolutely.
Speaking of fabulous authors, on June the 9th, we have a collection of short stories by our intrepid publisher. It's called New Horizons, and as far as I know, this is our first collection of just your work. Is this correct?
That is correct. It is the first collection of my stuff. We've done some collections of some of the other authors. I know Kevin Steverson had one that was really good. And this, people, I've been asked a number of times, hey, where's that story? It looks like I'm missing something. Where's that story? And so I tried to put together some of the stories, the short stories that had been in other places. Some of them, some of the Four Horsemen stories were things that needed to be in this. So, you may have seen them if you read Fistful of Credits or a few credits more, a couple of the other ones, but a lot of these were in different places. And a couple of them weren't, one of them was never published, I don't think. So, there's all sorts of different things going on in here, and they're from different series. It starts out with a couple from the old Theogony series. With the aliens. It's the three aliens and going through a couple different events in Earth's history. I don't want to say what the events are because it would spoil some of the things that you may not see coming until the end. But so it starts out with a couple Theogony stories. Then it has several stories about Kat, who is most recognizable from the cover of No Man's Land, the We Dare 3 No Man's Land. She is the girl on there with the weapon and the bionic arm. So she's got a couple of stories that were from different places. One was actually in the second Bane Noir anthology. But I now have the rights back to that. So this is out. And then there'll be a fourth story that'll be coming out in the next noir anthology from Bane, Down These Mean Streets in January, I believe. So if you like Kat, you'll be getting more Kat.
And if I remember correctly, Kat was the cover of that particular We Dare anthology.
Absolutely. So you can see her in all her glory.
And that was one of the most striking covers that we've had. So this is not only a great story, there's some great artwork that goes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Then, of course, there's, I believe, 9 Four Horsemen stories. And then it ends with a couple more non-Four Horsemen. Including the last one, which is It Started with a Salad.
Oh, wow.
Which was a joke. That's a Salvage Title one. Somebody in the Four Horsemen group said, nothing good ever started with a salad. And I said, challenge accepted. So It Started with a Salad. Then
we have another book coming out on June 16th. And that Chris Kennedy guy and Mark Wandrey, the two founders of the Four Horsemen universe, they have put out this Phoenix Initiative that's coming out the 16th, and this is one that I personally can't wait on. I am a huge Four Horsemen fan. Anybody who listens to the podcast knows that, and the very first Four Horsemen books were what got me interested in CKP and started our relationship. So tell us about the Phoenix Initiative.
Well, the Phoenix Initiative is something that is going on in the main storyline right now. It is basically the Mercenary Guild and Nigel Shirazi's attempt to regrow the Merc Guild after, several years of war. The bad guys are on the horizon. We know that there's about to be, much badness, and all the mercs are at their lowest phase ever. So he put out this initiative where, you can get Caspers cheap. The government of Earth said, hey, if you take some of these aliens off, you can, we'll pay you. So, there's a lot of that going on. It's first missions. It's new companies that are getting started. and going off to have their first fight. That's the theme. There's a couple that are kind of playing around on the edges of that, but by and large, that's what everything's about. It's the first mission. I know in my story, you get all the Caspers, you get all of the aliens, and I had such a ball writing it that I can't wait to use this company again. And I can tell you that there will be a number of these companies that are just starting out that will factor in going forward, with the main storyline. Because, we need more people. You can't just have 4 companies trying to hold off an alien invasion. So we're gonna need some of these people.
And I like the fact that we're going to focus on Nigel. It's been a while since there's been anything written that just focuses on him. He's kind of the 4 horsemen that kind of flies under the radar. So it's going to be fun. Plus, he showed so much growth in the book where he got on the board of the Mercenary Guild.
Absolutely.
And I think that was really the last time we actually focused, not entirely, but mostly on him. So I'm looking really forward to this. Yeah.
And I really like Nigel. He's not in any of this because these are all the new companies. He just, he as head of the Merc Guild said, we need more companies. We need people to step forward and form new companies and go out and do good things.
So this is going to be a major branch.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an effort to get new mercenary groups going, and you'll see them as the series goes on.
Cool.
And like all of the other 4 Horsemen anthologies, this one had an open submission component. I'm not ready to say who the 4 winners are yet because I haven't told them. But we'll be putting that out here in the next week. So before right about the start of the month, right about the time this goes live, everyone should have that information, and we can celebrate, jobs well done and the people that were really close, but just didn't quite, we had to, I only had 4 spaces, because we ended up with too many in this book. This book's going to be a big one. So hooray for that. But couldn't get more than 4 in this time. So, but got some good ones.
Well, this sounds like a good point to tell everyone about where they can get information other than the podcast about what's coming with CKP and see some of the authors, things like that, the Facebook page, chriskennedypublishing.com, the various Facebook groups that we support, and some of the other podcasts. Can you take a couple of minutes and tell us some of the ways that people can interact with CKP?
Sure. If you are a writer looking to get into some of these open submissions, the best place to start is at chriskennedypublishing.com and to sign up for the newsletter. That's great for both readers and writers, because it keeps you up to date with all of the information that, is fit to print about CKP. It also gives you all of the opportunities there are, to get in on some of these different open submission projects. And tells you about all of the specials we have going on from week to week, or any sort of new things. There are a lot of people that like to get their books as an EPUB rather than a Mobi. The way to do that is it comes out a week prior and, it's listed in the newsletter and you grab it. Because once it goes to Amazon, I have to take it down and it can only be through Amazon. So if you like EPUBs, that's, join the newsletter so that you can grab hold of those. A couple places, on Facebook, there's the Factory Floor, which is where all of the CKP authors come together, and you can just search CKP Factory Floor and that'll come up. And then there's the 4HU Merc Guild, which, is the same, where all of the CKP 4 Horsemen authors are. It's a great chance to meet the authors. If you want to ask them questions, they're always available. or, just if you have some thoughts on the series, you want to say, hey, great job. You want to say, hey, Kennedy, what were you thinking? You big idiot. You can do that too. I may delete that comment, but who knows? So those are the first three places. If you want to be part of CKP, that's where I'd go. The front page of ChrisKennedyPublishing.com also has the audiobook and the ebook, print book release schedule. So if you're wondering what's coming, you can always check there and see.
A lot of people associate Chris Kennedy Publishing with military science fiction, and we do a lot of military science fiction. But
yes, there is.
We need to make sure people know that there's also New Mythology Press, which is a offshoot or a part of Chris Kennedy Publishing, and it focuses primarily on fantasy. And we do have a fantasy submission this month, Shadow, Ash, and Prophecy by Trisha Woolrridge, and it's going to be out on June 20th.
Absolutely, and that is the second book in her 27 Kingdoms series. The first book came out a little while ago. We were hoping to get these a little bit closer together, but it is a trilogy, and I think she's almost got the third one finished, and we'll get that out as quick as possible. The covers for these are striking, very, very bold with green and gold, and there's dragons and swordsmen and magic, and it's a great series. When she started talking with Rob Howell, who manages the New Mythology imprint, he was just absolutely floored by it and couldn't wait to start getting it out. And we did, and it's been the people that have given it a shot have been really impressed and have really enjoyed it. So can't recommend this strongly enough.
And if you are a big fan of fantasy, you can go to ChrisKennedyPublishing.com and look for New Mythology Press, and you can see all of the books that come out under that imprint. And there is no military science fiction there. That is all fantasy. So, don't
all fantasy all the time.
That's right. We're Kentucky Fried Chicken. We do have our fried chicken, but we do have a couple of other things that we will serve you if you don't want the chicken.
And a lot of them are great changes of pace that are awfully tasty.
That's exactly right. There are some fabulous fantasy authors with New Mythology. Our focus this month and our featured author is Nic Plume, and he has a new series, the first book of which is Tenerie, Trial by Inferno. I believe he's a new to CKP author.
Well, he is actually a she, because Nic is short for Nicole. So it's actually Nicole, and she is indeed a new author.
Well, I stand corrected.
This will be the first book for her. I have all three of her books in hand, as we've been liking to do here recently. We'll do a rapid release on all three. All three books are Tenerie, because that's where the planet is where this is going on. The first book is Trial by Inferno. The second book is Forged by Crucible. And the third book is Tempered by Blood. So if you get the feeling that there may be some combat in there may be some things going on, you're right on track.
It's a tremendous book. I was fortunate enough to read this early, very early, and it was a great book when I read it. And it is now I've read the version that is going to be released, and we took a beautiful gem and polished it up and gave it facets, and it is a tremendously good book. If you want to try military science fiction and you're have some anxiety about the fact that a lot of the stuff that we do have 20 volumes or 15 volumes or whatever, this is your opportunity to get in on the front end of a series.
Absolutely. And this series was previously published, so it was out there a little while. Didn't really go anywhere. She just didn't have the marketing for it. And she brought it to me and said, hey, would you be interested in this? And she actually is German. So this one's going to go right into the CKPI as well, because she's going through and putting it back into German just the way she thought it when she was writing it. She's actually married to an American, and they are full-time RVers, kind of like Mark Wandrey and Joy. And, so they're traveling around, and, who knows where they're going to be from week to week, and maybe you'll see them on the road somewhere. Good folks.
Yeah. I cannot recommend this book enough. It's surprising. It has some elements that I haven't seen before in military science fiction. I think it'll be surprising to people to read. This is a great book to jump in and get a taste of Chris Kennedy Publishing, and the taste of a new author that I think everybody's going to enjoy.
Yeah, and you won't have to wait long. When you get in there and you really like the first book, the second book, bam, will be out the next month. The third book will, bam, be out the month after that. So, it's not like waiting for George R.R. Martin to get that next book out there, some decade later, that you're going to get almost binge-worthy fulfillment.
Yeah, George is getting to the point where, like, Dad reads a book, and then the son gets to read the next book, and then the grandson gets to read the next one. And if I didn't mention it before, that is June 23. June 23. Yep. Mark that date on your calendar, and if you have time, listen to the second half of the podcast, because we're going to be speaking to Miss Plume, and maybe I will be aware of her gender at that point.
and I guess it's obvious that you haven't spoken with her yet.
Never spoken with her. I read her book when it was a slush submission, but I guess it never came up in conversation that she was female.
Yep.
So, and then we're going to round out the month on June 30. And we get to read the next in Fred Hughes' fabulous series of The Prince of Britannia. We get to follow Hazard King as Prince Liberator. And this is one that I can't wait to read. It's the sixth book in this series, and you cannot go wrong if you have not read any of these, just buying all six and sitting down and binge reading it. It will be more fun than anything you're going to binge on Netflix.
I agree. And the neat thing about this series and Fred's writing is Fred isn't really classically trained, so he doesn't know the things that you're not supposed to do, and he does them all, which is neat, because you can a lot of series you get into and you're like, okay, you can guess what's going to happen next. With this one, you can't. People die that you think would be safe. People are safe that you think would die. There's all sorts of neat twists in his books, and I'm really excited about the series. This book actually is already up for pre-order, so if you want to make a note so that you don't forget about it, you can go grab it now. Same thing with Paul Pyatt's next one, which is up, and we'll talk about next month, because it is the week after Prince Liberator. Is Harvest in his Abner Fortis series. But the just to say a last word about Prince Liberator, the prince is a long way from home in this one. He's found Earth, and he's got to save some people, and the odds are against him, like they always seem to be. What will he do?
Yeah, I agree with everything you say about Fred, and if you want something to kind of associate Fred Hughes' writing with, I would say some early Jerry Pournelle. If you like some of his earlier military science fiction, you'll really like this.
Yeah, concur.
And then we do have a couple of audiobooks that are going to be out this month. We're getting Prince Awaken, which I think might have been the second. Is that correct?
Prince Awakens is the first.
Oh, the first.
It's the start of the series.
So
yep,
Prince Awakens, this would be a great audiobook to get, and it would introduce you to the characters and introduce you to the world. It's a great book, so can't recommend that enough. And then we've got a great Fallen World audiobook, Revenant by J.P. Chandler.
Absolutely, and there are some that are on my schedule that you haven't seen yet, that are also going to show up. They're in-house produced. There are two others. The first is It Takes All Kinds, which is a Salvage Title book. It was one of the anthologies from, let's see, I believe last summer. There was It Takes All Kinds, and then It Takes More Kinds.
Oh, that's right. I remember those.
Yeah. So this is the first of the two. It Takes All Kinds, and it should be out probably first week of June. So about the time that you're hearing this, you should be able to go get It Takes All Kinds in the Salvage Title universe. And then for those people that are interested in the Four Horsemen universe, which I understand one or two people that listen to the
podcast
may be interested in that. On a Cloudy Day, which is the third book in the Phoenix Initiative by Kevin Eikenberry and Jason Cordova. That one should be out also probably about the start of the month. So when they hear this, they should be able to run right out and get it, I believe. And then Misfits will also be available probably about middle of the month.
Misfits is a great book. So, yes.
Yeah. And those two go together. On a Cloudy Day and the Misfits, they're both Kevin Eikenberry, Jason Cordova. It's like a giant book that was split in half almost.
I can't agree more. Great books. I think they'll make great audiobooks. If you're spending time on the road, going to the beach, going to the mountains, or just traveling in general, these would be great audiobooks to put on in the background and listen to while you ride down the road.
Right. And then, like we mentioned earlier in the presentation, Hunters and Hijinks may be out right about probably the last week or so, maybe the middle of the month if things go well. So be able to get that. And then I know he's going to jump on Pirates and Payback. So the On a Cloudy Day, Misfits, and Hunters and Hijinks are all by Daniel Wisniewski.
Okay.
So it was one of those things. Nic Steverson heard him doing the Four Horsemen books, and Nick's like, please, can I have him for this? Because I love his voice and I think he'd do great. And so I talked with Daniel, and he's like, yeah, sure. I can do that. That'd be great. And for those that have read Hunters and Hijinks, he just, let me pull this up really quickly. He thought that Harold in the book was a lot like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. So that's where he went with that.
I never made that association, and he is that's great. Yes, I agree 100%. That he is absolutely Doc Brown. That is great.
When he starts shouting about hunting for treasure, you can see Doc Brown as the crazy scientist.
The hair sticking out on the side.
Energy, that energy, really excited and, all of that. So that's where he went with it. And it should be, if you liked reading it, experiencing it maybe even better. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, that's a full month. You got plenty to read, and it goes across several different series. So everybody get your wallets ready, and I hope that this hits you all while you're getting ready for vacation and are looking for something to read. Chris, thank you so much for taking time and doing the podcast again this month.
Absolutely. Great talking with you.
And we'll do this again for July. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you next month. Most interesting part of the podcast for this month, we have a new author to CKP. She writes under the pseudonym of Nic Plume, and she has a new series called Tenery, Trial by Inferno. It's the first book of a new series. I was fortunate enough to read the slush submission for this, and it interested me. It excited me. It was a great book, and it's finally coming out this month. in the month of June, and we want to welcome Nic to the podcast. Welcome, Nic.
Thanks. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Would you prefer to be called Nic or Nicole?
Either one will work fine.
Okay.
Nic's fine.
Okay.
So.
Well, Nic, like I said, as far as I know, this is the first book you've written for CKP. I don't know if you've had books published or anything published in the past, but this book here is tremendous. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a writer.
Okay. Well, this is actually the first book I have ever written. It's the first story I have ever attempted to write. Before the story came to me, I had zero interest in writing, zero interest in being an author, or never even thought about it. And then the story came to me and didn't let me go. So I figured I'll write it down so I could read it. And it went from there. And it's been going ever since. And it's like turning into that monster that's like not leaving me alone. If that makes any sense.
It certainly does. I've talked to several authors who have, as a matter of fact, John Ringo is famous for being in the middle of a novel and then an idea popping in his head, and he can't finish the novel he's working on till he writes what it was that popped into his head so he can get it out of his head to go back to what he's actually already been paid for. So we certainly understand that. Tell us a little bit about Tenerie Trial by Inferno.
About the story?
About the story, without spoilers. You know,
okay.
We want people to see if you can give them enough to make them interested enough that they want to go out and buy it the day it comes out.
All right. Let me see. So the story is about Mark Taylor. He's the main character, and his 3 teammates. They're all military special forces, but they are in the first book. They are rookies. They are just fresh out of the academy and on their first mission. This story takes place in a world that is far in the future, out in space. Humans have colonized the galaxy, and war has broken out. That's been going on for multiple generations now. And these teammates, they're 20-year-old kids, and they're trying to find their way in this. And the first mission goes very badly. They end up behind enemy lines, but that are in enemy hands and alone on their own. And then they try to just survive and make their way back to their unit or their fleet, as it is. And while it's a military science fiction story, it is more character driven, and it's more about the conflicts and internal conflicts between the characters and the characters have with themselves than it is about the overall military aspect to it. So, I mean, it falls under the military sci-fi category, but that's because it's a story about people that just takes place during a military situation.
Yeah. Reading the book, I thought that the most interesting part of the unit was how they worked with each other. How even though they're all of the same rank, Mark immediately is kind of the leader, and the dynamics between all 4 of the principal characters. Also, you have kind of an offshoot of humanity that has some special abilities in this book. True?
Yes, I do. There are no aliens per se, but the way I have taken it is what would happen if humanity goes out into the galaxy. And as it was, centuries ago when people explored new places, it takes forever to get to that said new place, to colonize it and make it prosper. And with space, those are really far reaches. So my thought was that in the beginning it would have taken them months or years to get to these new planets and colonize them. And then as technology evolved and space travel got faster things is where we're at now. There's faster than like space travel. However, these colonies developed isolated. So what happens to people that are, or humans, biology that is isolated in a place like it happened on Earth on islands that are like far away in the Pacific that developed on their own. So what would happen to humans at that time? And the way I took it was they would evolve in a different directions than other humans who would be living in a different ecosystem. And two of my main characters are what I call Din, and they call themselves Children of Deny. And they're what I call human offshoot. Their race, the original humans settled on a planet that they consider sentient. And this planet took these new settlers and made them her own, in her own vision, and changed them. And they look still human. However, there are differences to them on how they think, how they react, how they feel, how they deal with feelings. And then, of course, some other things like their sexuality, how that is handled, how they develop, and things like that. And it makes it some interesting dynamics because the other two characters, which are humans, are guys, and then the two Din are females, and how they react. The interactions can be at times very funny, especially if you come from, the typical human mindset or U.S. mindset of what sexuality is and interactions. And then you have these other people who are thinking totally different.
When I was reading The Den, as I got further into the book, and this is my interpretation, I may be way off base, but I got the feeling that the society of the Den was a lot like the Native American culture prior to, being exposed to, Western ideals and cultures. I kind of got that feeling from those characters, and maybe it was just something from my perspective that is way off base.
No, actually, you were right on. I mean, it wasn't that I studied Native American cultures and said, this is what I'm going to use. It was just how it came to be as I was developing these characters, and they kind of got developed as I was writing the story. And I came up with new ideas, and I took notes and got the whole picture together. They are very nature-centered. To them, nature and their planet specifically is a person. It is a conscience. It does things with intent, and therefore that's how they treat it. It's also, the other thing is the way they look at it, and a lot of times is they're very reserved. They're able to deal, they have ways, internal ways, and I call it readings, that they can control feelings of other people and themselves. And they're able to, like, what I call it readings, that they lay a hand on somebody's skin. It's skin to skin contact, and they're able to enter the mind of this other person and read not so much the thoughts as the feelings that go with the thoughts. And they're also able to handle or to help that other person deal with pain, emotional pain or physical pain, and control that better. But that also makes them, because they're masters of controlling emotions per se. And they're able to, so that makes, them already much different than a typical human who's just like crazy with emotions when it goes. Yes. And, and it kind of all goes with that. That's also that, their planet, their nature, they don't worship or pray or anything like that, but for them, it's just nature. It's Mother Deny. Yes, she's a person. I'm talking to her. She talks to me. She made me who I am. So for them, that's all normal. And that's how they talk about it, and that's how they deal with it. So yes, it's very similar to Native American mindsets like you mentioned.
Well, the scenes where she's helping Mark during the POW phase of the book are very powerful. They're very well written, and I was particularly impressed with how those characters were really three-dimensional, recognizably human, but they were both human and other, and it was they're really good characters. I like them a lot. The other character that intrigues me is, Mark seems to be better prepared than his comrades to be the person he is, and we are kind of semi-introduced to his mother in the first of the books. That is, even though there's not a lot there about her, that is a great character. Do you care to elaborate some on that?
On Mark or his mother?
Mark's mother.
Mark's mother. Okay. Actually, when I first came up with a story, and it might be cliche, but it did come to me in a dream. It was a dream, and I was dreaming about her. The dream was about her and how she conceived Mark. And then later, as I was playing with the story, and it didn't let me go, and I kept really dreaming, continuing to dream night after night is what happened. And then the focus changed to him versus her. But yes, one of the things that always stick out to me is something that is actually said in one of the books, that Sky, his mother, didn't so much raise him as she trained him. And that's what it is, that they lived as nomads. He grew up a nomad, a galactic nomad, living never in the same place more than a few months. To him, that was normal. It was her her way of life. Let me change these words around. And that was for him normal. There's nothing special about it. That his mother's job changed, and she spent time with him. He was like what you today would consider homeschooled, living in an RV, which is actually what my husband and I are doing currently. But yes, so that's how he grew up. And she was very much involved in raising him. She had, she went out and taught him skills like survival and combatives and things like that. And
very much that Linda Hamilton character from Terminator.
Yes, very, very much. Yes, very much so. And she, it's funny, I've actually never thought of that comparison, but yes, you're right. That is exactly how she was. And she taught him all these different skills, and to him it was always, she did it in support of his wishes. He always wanted to become a soldier. He always wanted to join Intergal, the military that he does join later on in their fight against the Traverse, the bad guys in the story, to help keep the galaxy free is what the whole fight is about.
There's a short part in the first part of the first book that doesn't go into any detail, but I think is one of the most powerful scenes in the whole book is when, she basically goes with him when he's shipping out and then turns around and walks away and never looks back. She's prepared him. If she's done her job right, he's ready to go. And
I mean, that's where it comes, that whole scene when he has this flashback right at the beginning of the book. And he remembers because of a saying about lucky charms, that, having charms for luck in combat. And that brings back that scene that you just mentioned. And she does. She says that, hey, if you need luck, then I didn't prepare you. That's literally what she announces to the world at that time, that, if my son needs luck in what he does, then I failed. And then she does. When it's time to say goodbye, she tells him that you will be the best. You will do, there will be nobody who can beat you, and I know you will, and you will not disappoint me. And goodbye, gives him a kiss, and walks away and never turns back. And it's literally it's the last time he ever sees her.
Yep. That's probably my favorite scene in the first book.
Is it really?
And it's so short.
Yeah, because it's just a flashback in this introductory scene. But it is funny because I remember when I first wrote it, and I wrote this scene years ago when I first trying to figure out, how do you go about writing the story and things like that. And I remember having some other writers read it, and one of them looked at me and said, "No, that can't be right. You need to rewrite this." And I was going, "Why?" Going, "No mother would act like that." And I was going, "Oh, you don't know enough mothers."
Yeah, I was going to say,
because,
I think the best mothers would act like that.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking. And she's preparing him for what he chose to do with his life, and she's doing the best that she can to get him to this point that he can reach his goals.
Well, one of the things I want to let the listeners know is, unlike traditional publishing, where you get a first book, and then if it happens to be successful, and the publisher goes back to the writer and says, "Well, hey, you got a great first book. Do you have a second?" And then you wait a year and a half to get the second book. We've got 3 books, I think, that are coming out pretty quickly in the series. Is that not correct?
Yes, the first 3 books, which I actually, the series itself, is named Shadows of Peace. And Tinare, which is actually the first trilogy, is the first 3 books. And you have the second one come out at the end of July. The first one comes out on the 23rd of June. The second at the end of July. And then the third, either the end of August or right at the beginning of September. So they will be back to back. And it will conclude the opening trilogy of the series that I have in mind. It is actually the whole story.
And that segues great into what's in the future for Nic Plume or Nicole. We've got this series. So the first 3 books are written. They're going to come out back to back to back. What do you see? Do you have other books coming out this year, or are you just focusing on this one series until you complete it?
Well, I wrote a short story for Bill Webb's Lost Brigade universe last year. That wasn't one-off, I guess I call it, because it was an out-of-the-blue request of his for me to write this short story, so I did. And I've been trying to see if I can come up with a continuation to that story, but I've been struggling with that. Otherwise, I have actually, like you mentioned earlier with John Ringo, it happened to me that a while ago, I had another dream with another story, and I had to stop writing what I was writing at the time and write down the outline. So I actually have another 2 to 3 book series in mind that I'm gonna finish out one of these days, but there's no timeline to it yet. And then, of course, Shadows of Peace. This story has been with me for a very long time, and I'm just trying to get it all out. And right now it looks to be an 8 or 9 book series. And I say 8 or 9 because originally when I first came up with the story, I thought it was just one story, one, like book length story. And then I started writing on it, and I realized that, no, it was a trilogy. And then I realized, no, the opening of the story was the trilogy, which is what you're getting this summer. And then once the trilogy's over, the characters will leave the planet Tinare and move on into further missions and continue to figure out exactly what is going on with Taylor and with Mark, because there are some things that are coming out over the trilogy that make no sense or that are oddities, I guess. And he's trying to figure out what's going on with that. So, but as of now, right, this is it. This story, I started writing because I wanted to get this story down, and that's always been my goal. I always thought that once the story is out, I'd be done. I have nothing else to tell. Clearly, I don't, because I did come up with that other trilogy to write, and I will sit down and write it one of these days fully. But that's about as far as my plans go.
Yep. And being a new author, you may not be, but are you? If listeners are people who have bought your book, if they're interested in keeping up with what you're doing, do you have any social media out there yet, or is that in the future?
Actually, no. I do have social media. I have a Facebook and an Instagram page under Nic Plume and Nic Plume Author. I also have a website, nicplume.com. Make it easy. That I've actually just updated yesterday and today again to get the new cover and everything on there. And they can get in contact with me through that. I love talking about my story. So any comments and contacts are very welcome. Like I said, once you get me going on talking about the story, I usually have to be slowed down from external ways or whatever, because I don't stop.
And I guess my last question for today is, we're right in the middle of convention season. Are you going to be at any conventions where people can meet you and talk to you about your books?
Yes, I'll be at LibertyCon at the end of this month. Then mid-July, I will be at Imaginarium in Louisville, Kentucky. And those are the traditional cons. And then I'll be at Factory Con, which is the CKP
convention in Coin Jock.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can't pick a better convention than LibertyCon. I've been going there off and on for probably 15 years or more. So
that's this is actually the first time I'm going there. I used to, as a fan, go to Dragon Con all the time. And we lived in the area close by, like an hour and a half outside of Atlanta for 12 years. So we went for Dragon Con for like 12 years running. This year will actually be the first time that we're not going. Since I mentioned earlier, we live full time in an RV. We sold our house a year and a half ago and got on the road and haven't stopped yet. And yeah, it is. And having one con to come back to every year was a little bit hard on our travel routing. So we are not doing Dragon Con this year, but I will see, continuing on, what other cons are in the area where I'm heading, or if I get a chance and the ability to fly back to something or whatever. Like LibertyCon. I'm very much looking forward to seeing and attending LibertyCon. You
will have a great time. It's one of the few cons that is limited by its charter to the number of people that can attend. Mm-hmm. And so everybody there are avid science fiction and fantasy fans, and it's a smaller group, and you can have, when you go to Dragon Con, you've got time to say hi, how you doing, thanks, and that's about it, because it's so huge. This is much more, sit around, get a deck of cards out, play a game of spades, and talk about books.
There you go. I'm looking forward to that very much.
Well, we are super excited to have you here. I look forward to the next time we are able to do this on the podcast with one of your later books or your next series. And it's been a real privilege to have you on. I think you've got a long career in writing science fiction. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the CKP Future Books Podcast with host Randall Wills. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving it a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you subscribe. Show likes and channel subscriptions are also much appreciated on the CKP YouTube channel. Finally, if you'd like to know more about this author or others on the CKP roster, visit chriskennedypublishing.com. Thanks for listening to the CKP Future Books Podcast. We'll see you next time.